Hello everyone, welcome to the video on graphing functions. We're going to be talking about graphing equations, creating tables from them, and then creating the graph from them. We're also going to be talking about x and y intercepts. So let's take a look at the first one. So you can see I've rewritten it several times because we're going to build a table. So we need a number in for x, and they provided some numbers for us. We could have chosen any numbers. They could have chosen any numbers because x can be any real number. That is, I could plug in any number for x and get an answer for y. But we're going to use the numbers they provided for us. So we're going to take and we're going to put -1 in the place of x in our equation first. So we're going to go y equals 2 times -1 minus 3. And 2 times -1 minus 3 is -5. So when I put -1 in for x, y turned out to be -5. Let's repeat. We're going to put 0 in for x. So now it's going to be 2 times 0 minus 3. So y equals 2 times 0 minus 3. And we get y equals -3. So when I input 0 for x, my output for y is -3. We're going to repeat with 2. Right? So this time 2 times 2 minus 3. And the output is 1. Repeat with the 4. Y equals 2 times 4 minus 3. And we get 5. So when I input 4 for x, my output for y was 5. All right? So once again, they provided these values for x. So we could have chosen any. If this was blank, you pick any number you want for x, plug it in, and solve. Right? So let's see, -1, we're going to graph now. -1, -5, 0, -3. We have 2, 1, and 4, 5. I hope that you notice that these points line up nicely, and that's what's going to happen. If you just have a plain x and a plain y in your equation, it's going to be a linear function. When it is when you graph it, it's going to be a line. So let's go ahead and graph that line. I'm going to go from here, graph it to the points. And we have now graphed y equals 2x minus 3. Right? Two of the things I want to discuss here are the x and y intercepts. So I'm going to write here x intercept and y intercept. And x-intercept. Where does this graph hit the x-axis? So I follow along my line. Remember, this is my x-axis. Maybe label it x, y. I'm going to follow my line where it hits the x-axis, and that looks like at 1.5, 0. I'm going to show you how to do this algebraically as well, but right now that looks like 1.5, 0. My y-intercept, let's change colors here. My y-intercept, I want to follow this until it hits the y-axis. I'm going to follow my line. It hits the y-axis right here. That's a point that we had. That was this one. And it is 0, -3. Okay. So what I want you guys to notice here, that to find the x-intercept, the y-coordinate 0. To find the y-coordinate, y-intercept, the x-coordinate 0. And that's what we did. We put 0 in for x and found y. If I were to algebraically do the x-intercept, I would put 0 in for y and solve for x. And we will be doing that on one of these. All right. So I'm going to pause for a moment, and I would like for you guys to complete this table, the one for number 1, y equals x plus 4. Complete the table, and then we'll be back. Okay, let's see how you did. So you can see over here when I plugged in -5, I got -1. So I fill in my table. When I plug in -4, I get 0. -2, I get 2. 0, I get 4. So I have my table here. And now I'm going to give you guys a moment, paper, pencil, just do a quick sketch of your graph of those 4 points. Okay, so I've plotted my points. Again, notice that they're linear. I'm going to draw my line through it. I'm going to try to draw my line through it. There we go. And now we have graphed the line y equals x plus 4. And I can actually get my x and y intercepts now from the table because I see a y that's 0 here and I see an x that's 0 here. We can confirm it looking at the graph. But now for my x-intercept, I'm going to abbreviate at this point. INT is intercept and y-intercept. Okay, so -4, 0. Just a little color coding again. -4, 0. That's where the line hits the, remember this is the x-axis. So the x-intercept is -4, 0. Again, notice the x-intercept, the y-coordinate is 0, because everything on the x-axis is, every point is something, comma, 0. Right? Now let's look at the y-intercept. So we've got here 0, 4. And look, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's this point right here. Right? So you can see that's where the line hits the y-axis. So that's 0, 4. Again, notice that the y-intercept, the x-coordinate is 0 because every point on the y-axis is going to be 0, comma, something. Okay? So the next one, the only thing I'm going to be interested in here is the 2 intercepts. I want us to find the x and y intercepts. So it looks like y-intercept. And what am I going to use here to begin the process of the y-intercept? Well, look at the 2 y-intercepts. X was 0 here, x was 0 here. So I'm going to put 0 in the place of x. So I'm going to come back up here into this equation, and we're going to have y equals 3/4 times 0 minus 2. All right. Well, 3/4 times 0 is 0, minus 2 is -2. So my y-intercept is -2. So I'm going to plot the point 0, -2. That's where my line, I'm not going to draw my line yet because I need a second point. Always need at least 2 points to graph a line. But I know whatever my line does, it's going to hit that point there. Right? Let's change color code here. And let's go for the x-intercept. And now think about what we want to do to find the x-intercept. And again, notice for the x-intercept, the y-coordinate was 0. Over here, the x-intercept, the y-coordinate is 0. So when I create my x-intercept, I know the y-coordinate is 0. So instead of plugging 0 in for x, now I'm going to put 0 in for y. So I'm going to start with this equation. Do a little separator here. And instead of putting 0 for x, I need to put 0 for y. So now I'm going to do 0 equals 3/4 x minus 2. And now we have a little bit of work to do because we don't get directly to y equals. Now we have to do our work for solving equations. What do I have to do to get x by itself? Hopefully you said plus 2. Plus 2. So now we're going to get 2 equals 3/4 x. And now I want to get rid of 3/4. What can I multiply? Because this is 3/4 times x. You could divide or multiply to get rid of fractions. I prefer multiplication. And we've talked about it a little bit. I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply. I'm going to flip 3/4. I'm going to multiply by 4/3. I'm going to multiply this side by 4/3. So now we're going to have x equals, and it's x equals because when you do 4 times 3, you get 12. 3 times 4 is 12. So you get 12 over 12, which is 1. So we have 1x. Now over here, I've got to multiply 4 times 2 and put that over 3. So I'm going to have 8/3. But so if I have an idea where to graph that, I'm going to do 8 divided by 3 and put my remainder at the top. So 3 goes into 8 twice, 2 left over. My denominator is 3. It's going to remain 3. So my x-intercept is 2 and 2/3. So that's pretty close to 3. So my x-intercept on the x-axis, I'm going to go to 2 and 2/3, pretty close to 3. Plot my point. And now I can graph my line because I have 2 points. Trying to move that a little bit better. Go. Okay. And so now we've graphed y equals 3/4 x minus 2. All right. So I'd like you to do one. I want you to find for number 5. Number 5. I'm going to pause this, and I'd like you guys to find the x and y intercepts for number 5. All right, here we go. So remember that to find the x-intercept, you need y to be 0. To find the y-intercept, we need x to be 0. So now we're going to plug them in and solve. Okay, so you can see here, to find the x-intercept, I use 0 for y, so I came over here into my equation, and I replaced the y with 0. 0 equals negative x plus 1. Solving for x, so the opposite of plus 1 is minus 1. And now I have negative 1 equals negative x. Remember, that's a negative 1x. So because that's negative 1 times x, I divide both sides by negative 1, and I get x equals 1. For the y-intercept, much simpler. You replace x with 0. So down here, you can see I've replaced the x with 0. So it's a negative, because remember it was negative x. So I put negative 0 plus 1. Of course, negative 0 is 0, plus 1 makes 1. So my y-intercept is 1. Apply to both of those points. And now we can graph. And we have now graphed our line, y equals negative x plus 1, by using the x and y intercepts.